Why does it always seem like everyone around us is always making a killing and we're just struggling to keep up? Everybody's getting more followers than us. They're making more of a killing than us on stocks like the latest IPO or on Bitcoin. And you know what? We're just always missing out. How can we finally be the ones winning the lottery? When is our ship going to come in? Well, in today's video, my goal is to use this mushroom and an Airbnb behind me to show you exactly how you can look for opportunities that can make you a killing as well. Now, you may have come here wondering, how much did that mushroom make? Well, $500,000 is what the mushroom made. And I'm just getting that out of the way so you don't think I'm trying to clickbait you, but the whole purpose of this video is to teach you how that money was made. Let's get into it. Flashback to June of 2010. This property behind me was listed for sale for nearly $1.6 million. And all the way through the next 2.5 years, the property went into escrow and fell out of escrow. Meanwhile, Mr. Mushroom had a little home he could keep growing in. So for 2.5 years, Mr. Mushroom grew his family and kept growing and growing. Family was starting to seep through the drywall into the laundry room, which was on the other side of the garage, and all of a sudden, not just started invading the wall next to the washer and dryer or under the cabinetry or behind the sink area. No, it started cultivating in the granite countertop. That is, you could literally see its growth grow through the countertop as the countertop became darker and darker. And this is granite stone the mushroom was living in. So needless to say, the price of the property kept plummeting. In fact, while the property started its price in 2010 at $1,595,000, it was reduced to $1,295 after the mushroom started living a bit. Then it was reduced to $1,095,000 and just kept canceling the deal. Nobody would buy the house. Then it was reduced to $940,000. $840,000. And now enter Kevin and his client. After multiple canceled escrows and multiple price reductions, we started thinking, wait a minute, what's wrong with this property? This isn't the market being funky. This is something about this property that could be creating a massive opportunity. In real estate, there's something known as the culture of fear. The best example I could give you for the culture of fear is, and I'm not trying to bag on this particular industry, these people are great people, but the roofing industry. When first-time homebuyers get into real estate, one of the first things they're concerned about is the potential for a leaky roof. And I'll tell you, in my career, I've seen more totally fine roofs replaced solely out of fear than I've actually seen leaky roofs. Part of that is because when we see leaky roofs in movies or TV shows, we see buckets full of water, mold, mildew, fungus. We have these images of Katrina destroying Louisiana and creating all this toxic black mold around. But the reality is, any single roof leak that I've ever seen in my career was a roof leak that could have probably easily been patched for under $20 in materials. And that's what I have done as a real estate investor. Now, that gives you kind of the example of how the culture of fear works, where people will spend $15,000 on a new roof that really just needs maybe if they hired it out, a $200 patch. Well, the similar fact can be said about mushrooms. And my client, having been a professional real estate investor, also knew that. And now I want to walk you through exactly how we were able to use this culture of fear to our advantage to make $500,000. And now, no, the nice thing about this $500,000 isn't that it's $500,000. I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome. No, it's that it was $500,000 that was able to be used in a tax-free way. That is, if you were working for $50,000 a year and after taxes went home with $40,000, you'd have to work 12.5 years to make the money that this mushroom made. And that's why you gotta stay to the end of this video so you can write down all of the steps to make a lot of money. Step 1, in order to take advantage of mushrooming opportunities like this one, you have to constantly be involved in the market. And this could be as simple as keeping an eye on every single property that hits the market. That's exactly how we came upon this deal. When we decided to take a look at the property and see Mr. Mushroom in person, we decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and write an offer. Let's see what happens. Now, this property had been on the market so long and had lost so much value that by the time we came around to it, the property was selling through something known as a short sale. Now, a short sale is where the seller sells the property for less than the outstanding loans on the property. However, the seller has to prove a hardship as to why she can no longer make the payments. Well, unfortunately for the seller had lost her job because she was becoming really irritable and was having trouble sleeping and concentrating. Even her dog started expressing some signs of irritability. And I guess it's anybody's guess as to what would have possibly caused that irritability. But anyway, at this point, the property was listed for $840,000 and we made an offer on it for $800,000 cash. Now, when an investor in real estate says cash, they rarely actually mean cash. Usually the money is coming from some kind of line of credit or a private party loan or some other source. That's because usually people don't want a lot of cash sitting around when they're professional investors. Now, I don't want you to get discouraged, so enter step 2. So remember, step 1 was being involved in the marketplace, but step 2 was have your financing in order. There are ways to get private party financing, but there are also ways to be pre-approved for renovation loans that would help you take care of issues like this. In fact, the very first property I ever bought, and it didn't have a kitchen, it didn't have toilets, and I bought it using an FHA 203K or 203K renovation loan. Now, it took an entire 2 months before we actually heard that we officially got the deal. That's because this is a short sale, and short sales are anything but short. In fact, they're usually a lot longer. They're not called short sales because they're short in time. They're called short sales because the seller is selling the property short or for less than what they owe on the property. Now, we get the deal, and as any good real estate investor does, the first thing you do is you surround yourself with a group of professionals. That's why really good real estate investors will always have a real estate agent and a circle of contractors and vendors and inspectors to help them through their transactions to make sure they're not getting screwed. The typical first-time homebuyer doesn't realize this. In fact, most first-time homebuyers are just looking for something pretty and move-in ready that has really nice staging and flowers and pretty colors on the walls. But professional investors realize the real money in real estate is made when you buy great quality properties that for some reason have fear elements that are making them sell for a lot less than they're worth. Such as a mushroom. Now, being my client's professional, I did everything in my power to get to the bottom of what was causing Mr. Mushroom's, well, existence. And see, here's something interesting about mold in real estate. In order for there to be mold, there has to be a source of moisture that helps propagate the mold, helps the mold grow. If there's no moisture, there's no mold. Or at least there's no living mold anymore. Now, me being a professional, my mission was to get to the bottom of what was causing Mr. Mold's growth. And after all, professionals generally realize that the only way mold can grow is if there's a source of water. So I went to the seller and said, hey, have you had any issues with the plumbing? And she said, nope, no issues that I know of. And I paused and sort of looked at her for a moment, and she said, but I do turn the water off every day after I shower. And I said, what? You turn the water off after you shower every single day? Yeah. And she kind of grabbed my arm and we walked outside, and she showed me where every day she would turn the water valve on to go take a shower, brush her teeth, and get ready. Then she'd come out and shut the valve off again and kill all the water in the house. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's very odd. And I said, have you ever thought about calling a plumber? Oh, no. I haven't called a plumber. And I'm thinking to myself, clearly somebody has lost their mind. Like, not to be insensitive here, but the first thing you should do if you have a mildew problem is call a plumber. So anyway, I asked her to turn the water on, and she turned the water on, and then I decided, you know what, let me find where the attic access is to this property. So upstairs in the guest unit of this property, which this is where we get into the whole Airbnb part, because this guest unit was like the perfect Airbnb that was essentially paying for the property itself. But anyway, inside this guest unit, I opened this access panel to actually just walk into the attic. I didn't even need a ladder for it because the guest unit was located above the garage and it had this access panel in the closet. So I opened this panel because I'm thinking, well, the water leak is probably above where the mildew is. Anyway, I go into this access panel and look at what I found. Not only is the plywood wet, leading me to think, oh my gosh, are you serious? Here's the problem. But if you listen closely, you can hear where the water is squirting. This is a video I took. I found this in like 5 minutes of looking for the problem. So the issue ended up being a pinhole leak in a 90-degree angle solder of a copper pipe that was just slowly, like a sprinkler head, squirting water out and drenching the wall. And by the seller actually turning off the water all the time, not only did it make it harder for her to actually see where the water was coming from, or God forbid, call a frickin' plumber, but it actually made the mildew's growth more aggressive, because when you give mildew some water, you give it the energy essentially to grow, but then it starts getting dry and it starts getting pissed off. And what does it do when it gets pissed off? It goes and it spreads all of its mold spores, thinking, I gotta spread my genes quickly before I die. And just exacerbated the mold problem. Oh, you can't make this stuff up. So anyway, now we know where the problem is, and we realize solving this plumbing leak would only cost probably a $75 service call with a plumber, which is shocking, but hey, whatever. It was our deal now, so great. Now all we had to do was deal with Mr. Mushroom. So anyway, after we discover this basically $75 plumbing repair that needs to be done, so this poor woman can actually use her plumbing again without fear of contributing to this mold, we had to deal with Mr. Mushroom so that we could finally restore this property into the very, very profitable Airbnb that it was to be. And so we called out a mold tester, and this mold tester came and started doing air sampling with their little air sample pumps and all that. And while his air sample was going on, he looked at me and said, hey, Kevin, you know, don't worry, don't stress out about this. I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, this is such a great deal. But generally, real estate agents aren't like me, and they kind of freak out over these things. In fact, this is the kind of stuff that I teach in my real estate investing course, how to deal with and how to identify. That's linked below. You could use coupon code SHORTREDFIN to get 20% off. You could also use that 20% off coupon code to get 20% off the real estate agent course, where I teach you how to work properly with your clients and actually provide them a more higher quality service. Both of these, by the way, have live streams twice a week where you can personally consult with me and ask questions. But anyway, he looks at me and says, Kevin, don't worry. There's only a 1% chance that this mold is toxic mold. 99% of mildews that grow in a house are not toxic. They're not dangerous. They're not problematic. Yeah, you gotta deal with them. They could cause some irritations like on your skin or you know, maybe like a runny nose. But generally, most of the household mildews are non-toxic. And I'm like, hey, whatever, man. That sounds crazy. I look at mildew, I'm like, that gross. Get that out of my life. I don't want that around me. But you know, whatever. If that's what you say, bro, whatever. Just keep doing your sampling. And so, sure enough, we get the mold report, and it comes back, you know, it's clear. Oh, pretty much fully loaded as Stachybotrys. And I'm like, that's not toxic black mold, it's Stachybotrys. Stachybotrys is the technical term for toxic black mold, which is also known for causing sleeping issues, irritability, and mental problems, as in mental issues. So we get ourselves a remediation quote, and a company wants to charge $75,000 to remove the drywall on this wall and the mildew and restore the functioning garage to the way it was. And what does my client do? Hey, Kevin, we got this expensive quote. Let's ask the bank to give us money off the price. And they decide to give us $47,000 off the price, to where all of a sudden my client was buying this property for $753,000 in a neighborhood of $1.3 million houses and Airbnbs. But this is where the story gets really juicy, because you know how my client got that quote for $75,000 to remove all that mildew and restore everything? Well, my client is a professional real estate investor. And just like what I teach all of the clients that work for me, there are really expensive ways to solve problems, and then there are safe and less expensive ways to solve problems. So, a few weeks go by, and I visit my client after the closing, and I realize everything's patched up. The drywall's repaired, the plumbing leaks repaired, the wood that was rotten between the walls has been replaced, pictures of everything fully documented, and my client had even had new mildew testing done to verify that there was not a spore of mildew left. And I said, "This is great. How'd you do it?" Well, this is where my client said, "Well, I found on Craigslist a few air purifiers. These are usually triple filtration air purifiers that generally cost somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000, depending on the strength of them. You could oftentimes rent these for $80 a day. The filters are very expensive though. And he set these up and got a few people to put on Tyvek, tape up their wrists, tape up their shoes, and put on respirators with toxic dust filters. Probably by far the most important thing when it comes to mildew. In fact, the EPA says that most mold projects can be dealt with by a homeowner themselves. It's only when they get larger in size that they become more complex. This would be considered a more complex one, but the general rule of thumb still remains. You wear gloves, you wear Tyvek, you properly ventilate the area, you wear a mask, and you wear gloves. Well, here is such a mask. I just bought this on Amazon for $38. You might be thinking to yourself that this stuff is expensive, but it ain't. In fact, it's pretty freaking easy to use. See, the beauty about why these work so well is rather than those stupid little white paper masks that people use where air can still kind of come through between the sides of the masks and then it's kind of worthless, these you can actually proof yourself that they're getting rid of anything that could potentially get into your nose unfiltered. Watch this.
See, the beauty with these is you can cover up the sides like this and hold it and breathe in.
And if while you're covering the filters, you can't breathe in, you kind of just go, you breathe and you go, I can't breathe, because you're covering the filters, it means there's no leak around the edge of the mask. And so now that everybody was properly protected, what did they do? They set up the filtration equipment and they went to work, properly bagged everything up after cutting it up, properly disposed of it all, and rebuilt the wood, the drywall, the laundry room area, mildew tested everything, and boom, everything was clear. Now instead of spending $75,000, the client spent under $5,000 to put all that drywall and the lumber, all of the labor costs for his employees, these $38 respirators, everything, under $5,000. When a company said the cost of the project would be $75,000, culture of fear, remember that, business of fear, and the market had reduced the value of this property over $550,000. Now, the client ended up doing some other renovations as well and got the property ready for Airbnb. After he was done with it, it was probably worth, again, $1.3 million. Today, it's worth in excess of $1.7 million, and Airbnbs for a typical net profit of around $7,000 per month. So next time you think about why other people always seem to get so lucky and everybody else is winning the lottery, maybe you should start asking yourself, what are you doing to let the lottery fall in your lap? And maybe you should start considering getting educated in investing in real estate, where a massive society of fear, well, that's kind of Frank Boothy, isn't it? Prevents a lot of people from making money, but leaves just enough opportunity for a ton of other people. Now, remember how I said this was tax-free money? Yeah, I wasn't kidding. See, when you buy a good deal like this and you create over $500,000 in value by removing a mushroom, it's only taxable when you go to sell unless you do a 1031 exchange, which if you keep the property, you don't pay taxes. If you eventually decide to sell the property, you can exchange it into another property and keep doing that forever and ever and ever and never pay taxes. There's even a way you can avoid paying taxes through your death. So in other words, you can pretty much screw the government out of ever getting their money. Now, I'm not a CPA, so don't sue me, bro. Instead, check out this video on how I made $100,000 buying a house off Facebook, or check out this video where I go undercover door knocking to make $100,000 in a summer.